Cool. Looks like everything's good. And whenever you guys are ready at noon, I'll just switch it over to you. Standing by.
Should I just say we're ready to go?
Yeah, at noon, whenever you're ready to go.
Okay. We got about, what, 5 minutes?
Yep.
No, it looks like about 8 minutes, I guess. I don't know. Want to put the palette color?
Well, I will.
Okay. I didn't need the yellow because I wasn't sure what I was going to paint. But that's okay.
This, I need to make sure this volume's. All right then.
minutes.
Okay, it's noon on my watch. You guys ready?
I'm ready
Yep.
anytime.
1, 2, 3, go.
We go.
Go. I think.
Okay, everybody. Hopefully, those of you that tuned in have a good image in front of you. I had a hard decision as to what I was going to do today, and I finally decided it's cool outside, but it's sunny. So I thought, what the heck, let's return to the coast. So doing this painting of Portuguese beach here in Sonoma County. The reason I picked it is I like this, I like the composition. I like the foreground leading into kind of this background and then way into the distance. Also the movement of the water, the shadows that cut across the water, the reflective qualities, almost has a nice violet quality. For some reason, I just bit it off more than I could chew today, and I decided I'd go 2430 instead of 18 by 24. The format's a little bit different. This is a little bit longer, so I'm condensing things up a little bit, which is what you have to do. If your format is different, you want to squeeze everything in. And I've made a few really crude marks. It's a piece of hardboard, and it is gessoed and toned down with a little bit of a raw sienna and a little bit of blue mixed into it. You can see the brush mark. The spatters are because I had it sitting off to the side while I was doing another demonstration. Yesterday I was doing an acrylic demonstration, so now I've got to get back into my oil cap. So let's just start with the, like I always like to, with the background. A lot of people have said, oh, you like to paint top to bottom. And my initial comment was, no, I don't. And then I realized that usually that's the case because the furthest thing back in the picture tends to be at the top. So taking this little gesso brush, I'm using the gesso brush because I got a lot of territory to cover. And which means I want to cover a lot of it quickly. So I'm using this radiant blue that I have. I laid my palette out today, really not positive of what I was going to paint. So I actually put a couple colors on here I'm probably not going to need. For example, I put a yellow on. I doubt very much I'm going to use a pure yellow. But so goes it. I mean, that's just the way it is when you start to lay your palette out. I generally lay palettes out according to what I'm painting, even though I do have what I call my basic workhorse palette. So this is basically radiant blue and white, and the radiant white. So a couple of radiant colors. We just kind of block it in. It's pretty thin. And as it moves down, it gets warmer. It's really obvious. You can see. So I'm going to actually add a little bit of a cad orange hue into this color and a lot more white. And I could take it into the violet if I wanted to, meaning more of an alizarin. And I'm just going to take a look at this and see how it feels. It feels good. Now you see a pretty stark difference between this. So what you do is you work them together. And therefore that difference isn't stark. And you see, it's not like I'm spending hours and hours to get that blend. You know, I can always go back and chew up the sky a little bit more and add a little bit more interest to it color-wise. And that is if I have time. If I'm painting plein air, I don't want to really waste, unless I'm doing something like clouds, I don't want to waste a ton of time doing that. So generally I will simplify the sky, and if I need to augment it or add a little bit of color nuance or variation to it, I'll generally do that later. But right now I kind of like the color. I think it's pretty much the way I want it. I'm going to take a little bit more white and a little bit more of the alizarin. Holy smoke, I keep forgetting how, you know, you'd think after all these years of painting, I'd know how powerful alizarin is, but it never ceases to kind of shock the heck out of me when I use alizarin. So I threw some alizarin into it because right down, and I can even see a little bit of yellow. So I threw a little Naples yellow light into that, and we'll just kind of fuzz that down towards the horizon. And we give a nice movement color-wise to the sky. I could probably go lighter here. You know, I don't want to dwell a lot into this, so I just took some white and some little bit of Naples yellow and lightened the sky right about there. And we'll go around that tree. We're just kind of leaving spots where some of the other elements sit in the picture. And I'm guessing. I think I'm going to leave the architecture out because I want it to be just a nice pastoral beach scene without any man-made objects in there. So I'm probably not going to put that in there. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay. There's a layer here. There's a little rocks that I have time, and then there's the big plane in here. So the first plane I'm going to lay in is the lightest. It's in the distance. So you paint. I like to use the phrase, I like to paint from back to front. It's an old animator's line. You paint from the back because everything's closer value in the back and everything gets stronger value contrast as we move to the front. So we're just going to kind of lay, there's a little cloud bank back there, or a mountain, which I could put in, but right now I'm not going to. So that's basically what I'm laying in for that distant hill, and we just to give it a nice interesting edge here and there. I use my brush a lot of different ways. Okay, and then we're going to leave it, and then we're going to start with this bank that comes in front, which tends to be a little darker. So I'm going to use a little asphaltum this time and mix that right into the same color I've been using. I'm going to test it first. It's a little warmer than I want. Throwing a little bit more ochre into it. That still keeps it pretty warm, unfortunately. So bring some blue back, but I want it darker. That's coming close. I'm going to throw a little more ochre, and that's it. We're just going to stay with it right now. So this is kind of the bank, and I'm painting shapes. These are just the big basic shapes where things will occur. I can see it get a little bit more in the orange area as it moves to the right, because it probably minerals in the rocks. So I took a little bit of cat orange, a little, there we go. We just made it a little bit more orange as we moved across. Right up here on the top a little bit. And there's a bank, a hill that goes back behind it. I really like that. And it's pretty orange. It's pretty orange, but it's lighter. So I'm actually adding a little Naples yellow light and the orange together. And we'll just put that little. So we're trying to break up the different shapes and still keep a value consistency from back to front. A little bit behind it. So I threw more blue into that color and a little more white. Probably too much now that I look at it. That's okay. You know, go back to my old line. Don't be afraid to be wrong. Because we'll fix it later. Now let's kind of get the trees in. The two trees that I see. They're green, but you know, they're green because I know they're green. They're not green because they really look real green there. So I took the color I was using. I added a little bit of sap green and a little asphaltum. I don't know how this is going to be, but that's not bad. For a starting point, that's not bad. So we're going to kind of get some foliage down here, a little bit more sap, a little bit more asphaltum. The reason I'm putting the asphaltum is I don't want it to get too green on me too quickly. And let's see, we want it to come up, be about up to here. Got to be careful because I'm mixing it into the paint below. So I need to kind of really be careful with how many times I touch down over that, because every time I touch down over that paint below it, I'm picking up the paint.
So Earl has a question. Do you play with your color saturation on your photos or just keep them just as
No,
your?
I don't know how. No, I don't. I'm glad someone asked that. I never thought about talking about that. No, I don't. And I know why I don't. It's the old illustrator in me where I'm so used to just taking and understanding. And with all this, boys, I really am showing my age. I was going to call all this new fandangled computer stuff. I almost wish I knew it because I do know artists that do that, and it may help a little bit. My trial and error comes right on the canvas. And it's either going to work or it's not going to work. I'm pushing just so I get the feeling of the cypress up a little higher. I'm looking for the overall shape. That feels pretty good. Okay, that's about all we can expect right now. Pretty good is good enough for me right now. Okay. Let's keep moving because we're getting all these placeholders in. So there is now. I just noticed this. So I'm mixing a lot more. Tony is way down, mixing a little ochre and a little Naples yellow light to it, and we're going to put this. Nope, went too far. It's a little tree right there. Okay, and a little bit on the ground, a little bit of greenery on the ground. And then this comes over, it's got a little bit. Okay, not too much. Don't, I can dwell on that for a long time. I can really get into all the darks here. Don't want to right now. Let's keep moving forward. Let's keep the lay-in going. If I get the lay-in going, then hopefully I will have the time. I like those edges that I'm getting right now. I should have brought that sky over further. I'm just going to bring this out more is all. That's a lot of asphaltum, a little bit of blue mixed in with the color I already had in the brush, which is kind of lighter. So I know it's not as dark as I can go. And I think somebody asked a question about a week ago, do you hold back on your darks, on your really heavy darks? The answer is yeah. So real fast, not trying to be accurate at this point, just kind of looking for the basic areas and shapes that are occurring. This is going to come all the way here. Here, you notice I'm using a different kind of stroke every time I create an edge. That takes away from things looking very monotonous, the same old, always. So why waste time? Why waste time trying to be perfect right now? Because even if I'm what you might think is perfect, I might not like it. I might want to change the shape. So why not be a little bit more free and adventuresome to a degree and fix it later if indeed it needs fixing. Paint was getting a little dry. So see how fast I can lay that in if I get the right consistency in that paint. And for the consistency, I'm using more terp than I am anything. One reason, I want that to set up. Terp will set up faster than medium. I call it terp, it's Gamsol. It's old school in me referring it to terp. I started using Gamsol years ago because of the toxicity. I just heard it was the least toxic. And because I paint a lot, why not be as safe as you can be, huh? See? That almost looks like paint strokes, which is okay. They are paint strokes. It's what we're depicting the rocks. So we can see where the light's coming from. The light's coming from basically above and back here. And that's why the front side of the rocks, like this part right in here, which would be here, here, and the way it comes all the way down here. That all stays pretty dark. So keep it dark. If you're in question, paint too much. Don't try and be, you can waste a tremendous amount of time, and it's not only the time, but if you're trying to be too precise too soon, you can lose energy in your painting. And I tend to, it's something I like to do. Now, if you're the kind of person that loves precision, you may not want energy. But for me, a painting is always more appealing when I feel the movement of the paint and still feel the depiction of the subject.
Oh, say that again.
I don't know if I can say that again. Painting is always more interesting to me when you feel the movement of the paint, so you understand that it's paint, but you don't lose the depiction of whatever the subject is you're painting. So you want that balance. Let me put it this way: I want that balance. I don't want to throw my wishes on all of you, but if that's the kind of painting, if you want more precision, you just spend a lot more time getting the drawing accurate and everything. Because this drawing, a lot of it is relatively improvised. It's not all exactly the way that it looks. It's about a quarter of it. Comes right about here. Looks like it comes down, brushes out. Running out of paint. I mix more turp, grab more paint, pressed hard on my brush so I got some of the residue of the other color out so it doesn't go completely black on me.
Is there texture on your board?
No, there's not texture. It's pretty smooth. That's a little on the red side. I threw a little bit more ultramarine into it. It started feeling too hot for what I was after. I'd rather have too many, so I don't have to sneak darks back into it. So you can get a kind of a feeling for abstractly what's going on here. Now, as I
do you think you had to train?
say again?
Do you think you had to train yourself to just see basic shapes? I mean, because I think so many people notice detail first. But
Anna, I don't know if it was a question that.
That's my question.
Okay, good. Like we've never talked about this. Literally, what I had to train myself mainly when I started doing landscapes is to look at the design of the landscape, and you do that by squinting. You do that by not focusing on the detail. And if that's what you mean, yeah, I used to when I first started painting. I would always look for my subjects, which I don't want to diminish that. The subjects are still important to me, but the design of the piece becomes, to me, more of what it's about. The subject comes afterwards. And I guess that's why what I'm discussing now is painting in these big, bold shapes and eventually letting the subject kind of work its way into the picture a little bit more than it is at present. So these shadows are in the water, and that's why I'm keeping them kind of blue, kind of a violet blue. There's a gray color. I'm purposely not trying to get any color too prominent right now. I don't want, I want the colors, or the brighter colors, the more colorful colors, if you will, to emerge out of the painting. I do a lot of, usually once or twice a year, I've done these Sonoma County workshops where we even go out to the beach very near this area, right? Besca, over on that side. And I recently discovered this when we took our dog out for a walk on the beach. And it's a wonderful little area. I'm not a geologist, but man, the rocks are really interesting and what occurs on those rocks. So I've thrown a little bit of shadow detail here and there into the rock. I see a little bit of the water coming up. I still want to get as much of it laid in and then go back. So I'm going to go back to the water in the background now. And there's some rocks way back there. So let's first kind of maybe knock in a rock or two that might be right about here. Oh, that's a little dark, but oh, that's not bad. So now that's a little light. So I want to split the difference. It's got to be dark enough to stand out, but light enough to stay in the background. Okay, that's okay. Talking to myself. Now, put some, because I already had that light color, I just mix that back in with the asphaltum and and we'll put some of these darker shadows. But remember, they got to stay in the background. Okay, they cannot be as dark as these shadows. It's a form of what we refer to as atmospheric perspective, meaning that the atmosphere creates a perspective of its own, a distance.
So how do you retain the energetic feel to your stroke when your masses meet or when you are refining the finish?
Well, number one, I change the grip on the brush if I really need to bring control to it, but I really hold back on that as long as I can. If you notice, I'm using the brush more this way. I haven't used it this way. This way is when you want precision. This way is when you want more movement, feeling to your painting. And the thing I like about these little gesso brushes, they're really nice. Believe me, I love my rosemary brushes, and I like to use the combination of the two. This will give me a lot more quick lay-in and energy, and the rosemary will help me more when I want to go to refine. The way I keep my energy is I keep moving, but keep moving throughout the painting. Do not dwell on any one area. Okay, if you think it's right, even if you think it's not exactly right, if it's close to the way you want it, move on. Go back and assess it later. See, I want a little bit more violet in that color. That's a little too green of a blue for me. So I threw some more ultramarine into it and a little bit of alizarin and a lot more white because I still want to maintain the lightness. That feels a little bit better right there. Okay, so that comes there. A little bit of it sneaking up here, down around these rocks. I kind of like the graininess of it too. It's very dry paint right now. Very Nikolai Fechin, Mr. Dry Paint.
Oh, he's really dry?
It has been said that he would lay his paints out on a piece of like pine or some sort of board that was very absorbent and let them kind of dry out as he was using them. And in doing so, he got some of these real crusty looking kinds of strokes. Which was very different than someone like Sorolla, who used more of a fluid, or Sargent, who was much more of a fluid painter. Although as Sargent started going outside more, he started getting into a lot more textural qualities into his paint.
You said that's radiant blue and
That's
asphaltum.
This is right now? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
No.
Oh,
it is
sorry.
Ultramarine, a little bit of radiant, white, and alizarin crimson. I don't know why I couldn't think of the damn name. Alizarin crimson.
Okay.
If you want it more violet, the radiant blue is very green, so it's not going to be. It's going to be very green. Also, I see it get a little violet up in here. Now it gets really violet right in here, right in there. It's really, really beautiful, really nice. And now I'm seeing even some more reds, bizarre little reds back in the water right in here. I'm fussy too much. I'm focusing too much on the refinement, the nuance of color. So I'm calling myself out on that. Now I want a much more beautiful violet color, a little darker, which it should be. So that means less white, and that's going to happen right. This is the white foam in shadow. And then this same color is the water in sunlight. Kind of cool, huh? It's just same color for two different areas. These are just little reminders of where I want to put things, the lighter colors. And as it comes forward, it gets warmer. So I threw more alizarin into that color, and we're going to go right in here and pull it, and blend it right into that color. So we get a little bit of other color. And as it comes forward, it gets darker and warmer. So I actually took now, same color I was just using, I took some asphaltum and some ultramarine blue together, and we're going to go right about here, a little too dark. So I'm going to a little more white, not much. Let's do it again. Okay. You have to put it down, trust yourself. I'm in the right range. Whether I'm correct, 100% correct or not, I probably am not. Now, it's interesting because as it comes down to the bottom, it still stays dark, but there's more ultramarine in it. So why not do it now? Get it in there the way you want it right now. I'll put the foam, anything like that, back on top. And as it moves over to the right, it gets warmer. So I can move my browns back into that color. I even throw a little orange into it right there. And we'll just work it so they kind of work together. The one thing I'm keeping in check is the value situation. The value situation is probably much more crucial than having the color exactly the way you want it. Okay. So we're going to start back in here, come forward. We're going to start back. There's a little bit of white water and some other rocks, and I'm going to look for little tidbits of information. Little tree up there. Another one over there. And a little darker, not much, but I need to get a little bit more information in here. Some of these darks, a little bit more, maybe a little more alizarin into it. Excuse me, asphaltum. Or if it's not going red enough, I always can pull in some burnt sienna. That's a little too much burnt sienna. I'm dragging this color over the other, start to give it kind of the correct feel. There's a sand bank back here, and I want to, all those values and colors are very, very close. So it's a matter of really manipulating. See, that's way too red, and it's too dark. So I threw some white and some, there, that feels better. Maybe I can bring a little ochre into it. Let's see. Probably. I don't want to waste the time remixing colors too much right now. I want to be as close as I can be back there. That's not bad. I can see a darker edge, and it comes up to about here. And then the sandbank tends to warm up as it moves back to the right, much the same as a lot of other areas do. Warms a little bit and lightens a little bit. So throw a touch of Naples yellow light into that color, and we'll move it back. And we'll bring it down here, bring it down here. And then there's some blue water. So I can go back to the blue I was using, that violet, kind of blue, gray, violet color, and test it. Not dark enough. I want that darker edge on the water up there, where it's really wet sand, where the water meets the sand and leaves it a little bit wet. It's okay. I just kind of took a real quick little step back just so I could get a rough feeling. Normally, if I'm painting something like this, I'm going to be back about every 3 to 5 minutes, taking a look, judging with color I'm putting down. Generally, whenever I've done demonstrations, I don't do that simply because of time. Not that it takes a lot of time to step back, but on location, I step back a lot. A lot. Maybe it's I don't trust myself, huh? Each time I do this, I'm seeing a little bit more. Oh, I like some of that stuff in there. That's kind of nice. Kind of like that stuff. Let's get a little bit of that white water going on in there. I'm going to grab a, I put all my brushes out and I can't find them. I swear to God, I put them out here and I cannot find the one I wanted. I still can't. Okay, I'm going to have to use this one. Okay, white and a little bit of, I have a warm white. And we're going to kind of go, I don't want to have to go back on these areas if I can. So I need some medium in there so the paint goes on really well. There's going to be a few more rocks I've got to put into. We want it to kind of blend in into the ocean a little bit right in there. It's a little bit up back in here. It works its way up in here. I'm just going to soften it a little bit. I don't want it as harsh. There we go. So I'm actually mixing it into the color, into the blue. And if I need to, I can just come over it again, lighter, later. Back in here. You don't want to get too much into this. Okay, let's leave that alone. Let's get into this rock. I'm about 30 minutes into it, and I think it's time that I get into that. So I'm going to take my big rosemary, number 12. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with kind of this, not the bright color, but kind of the more brown, reddish brown color. So I start with a little bit of, boy, I'm going through white. Oh, darn. I'm going to mix a little white up. And I got it right there. There we go. I had to squeeze a little more white on my palette. I'm using so much. I keep forgetting this is a big painting. For this, to try and accomplish this much in this amount of time. But, you know, figured what the hell, let's give it a try. Let's see what color that is. Ah, close, wow. I threw a little bit more asphaltum into it. Okay, let's hit. So we're just kind of, I'm painting kind of what I see, but I'm using this as reference, not as the gospel, so to speak.
Would you say you are enriching your color compared to the photo?
Not yet.
No.
Not yet. I'm being relatively accurate, or I'm trying to be, let's put it that way. The only thing I've really changed a little bit is some of the distant stuff. Those trees are a lot lighter than they are there. But as far as enriching, not sure about that. I will as we move along, hopefully. And I want this to kind of work its way into the brown that's already there. Where else do I see a similar color like that? Well, I see a similar color, maybe a little cooler. So I throw a little, maybe over on a little cooler still. I throw a lot of, there we go. A little bit, some shadow detail. I missed there's a little beautiful little dark right about in there that I could probably put in. Add more of that reddish color back into it, and we'll get a little bit in these rocks here. And there's one back behind, and I'm going to bring a little bit more orange into that color. And we're going to kind of put, nope, not light enough. It needs more snap. That's why. So a lot more orange still. Top of that rock as it comes down, fades over here. So we have kind of that indicated. Now, while I've got that same color in my brush, I'm going to move up into this area here, here. I had to add more medium. I could feel it was not sitting on there really well. So I added some safflower oil because it'll go down. Same color. If I'm not talking, it's because I'm thinking. Every now and then I actually stop and think. So if you hear me talking, generally it's because I know what I'm doing at that time. If you hear me shut up, it's generally because I'm kind of not sure. Hoping it's working, but you know, not stepping back a lot is a lot more orange now, and some more ochre. I'm probably going to want to come over that at the end with a lot of knife. Orange and ochre now. This I'm beginning to enhance. Someone asked a question a little bit, so we're going to really begin to pop it up in here a little bit. The colors on the as the rock gets over here, they get lighter. So I added some white and some yellow to it. Now I may have gone too far. Maybe. Not sure, but I'm going to let it stay. But I didn't like that one kind of a stroke, so I'm using different pressures on the brush right now.
What brush are you using now?
This is a rosemary number 12.
Yeah, I tend to like that one a lot.
I tend to like that a lot. Bigger paintings, I use these big brushes a lot. Now the intermixing of color that I'm getting ends up working for you because you don't want the same color everywhere. So in a way that works. Now the little white areas, I should have painted those areas out. As it moves into this area, it gets quite a bit lighter and oranger. So I'm going to take the cat orange, the yellow ochre, put it in a separate spot, bring some white, maybe some Naples yellow light, too much into it. But I do want it to be obviously a lot. This is real dry paint, so I'm going to give it a shot here. That's right. It's dry and it's thick.
Okay.
Kind of like me. And dry and thick.
Is that it's a number 12 flat? Is that what you
Number
said?
12 flat.
Is that a
Ivory.
ivory? Okay.
Now, kind of bright. So I threw some more orange into it because I still didn't push it enough. There, we got a little bit more snap to it right up in there. Same here. Well, I've got that color on the brush. Why not use it, huh? If you see it elsewhere, pop it in there. Gets a little lighter up there. Take a little bit more Naples and get a little bit brighter right in here. Whoops. See, it's not sticking now. It's blending. So I added more solvent-free gel. Now watch. See how it sits on top now? That's medium. Medium in touch. I'm not pressing hard.
So Ray made a good point. He said, I think it's something that people might not realize that you're doing is trying to get the painting covered without worrying about things being perfect.
Exactly.
Just trying to get value.
Hey, when you're doing something this big and in this time frame, that's exactly what you're hoping to do. Get the painting covered, get it all set up, make it look pretty convincing. And then, you know, if you have the time, go back and fuss. Okay, that's beginning to work okay. I see I can bring that same color down here. Got it up the top.
do you like to use thicker paint as you come forward?
Yeah.
Like
Yes, I do.
original stuff?
It's my preference. I don't always work that way, but yes, my preference is to thicken it up. And each layer, as you work to from one layer to another, let your paint become more opaque and bolder. Okay, so stay with that color for right now. I don't want to remix colors. I'll add color, vary color as I go along. But when I'm working quickly, you can't throw some blue into it, but probably too much. Let's go grayer, grayer. That's darker there. It should be darker. Paint into paint. Should talk a little bit about that. That can create a wonderful character in your painting. Doing wet paint into paint, not always trying to paint. In other words, paint over things, but let the paint almost mix as you're painting. It can create a wonderful characteristic.
So Laurel is saying that most of the strokes with the rosemary ivory are pulled, not scrubbed in, right?
Yeah. The scrubbing happened when I used the very first brush, the gesso brush. So I'm not even mixing. I'm just picking up some colors and not mixing them really thoroughly on my palette and letting them mix here. So now I'm picking up a little more blue. I'm just seeing these colors, just seeing variations in these colors and letting them happen together. Cooler. Cooler, cooler. Now bright rock right about in here. Get it in there, leave it alone. I'm getting some really interesting intermixing going on here. This is a little flat. I could use a little bit more variation down in here. So while I've got kind of a muted color on my brush, I think I'll just add a little bit of color variation. If I want a darker snap for a crease, I can do that. And we can you can put as much of that as you have time to put in. This is where, truthfully, I really like to layer. I really like to, and even work with a knife. But, I want to make sure I don't dwell on this and spend all my time in this one area. So I kind of want to get it laid in so we can move to other areas. I'll return to it, hopefully. My plan is to return to it. Lighter. Very light. So what did I do when I needed it lighter? I threw some Naples. Partly because Naples works well with all the colors I'm using if I need to get lighter. Even take a little more orange, squeeze a little bit more warmth into kind of the top part of that rock. I haven't stood back, so I have no idea how this is coming out. Just want to get the overall feeling of what I see in there. Grayer. If a color is grayer, I just reach over with the color I've got my brush and throw more blue into it. If it's warmer, if it's darker, I throw more asphaltum into it. So I have all those colors. I'm just kind of picking and choosing, realizing that, I need it to get a little darker. I need it to get a little lighter. I need a little more color. These are all things that I'm doing as I move through the painting. So there's little crevices. Rather than dwell on them, I'm just kind of indicating them. And it adds, one of the things you can do towards the end is do that with a nice small brush if you need a little more accuracy in your painting. I prefer not to get too accurate too soon. So I give myself, in other words, all I'm doing is I'm playing safe, you guys. I'm not doing anything mind-boggling. I'm playing it safe. So I'm starting to get the right feel. Things are beginning, and which means I really need to move to other areas. Top surfaces, top surface there, top surfaces. It comes, all I'm using almost pure Naples here. And I'm just letting it sit. Oh, is that thick? That's fun. God. You know, I'm such a tight painter that when I get crazy and gutsy, I actually like it because I learned something. And that's what you're doing. That's probably what you're doing when you're painting is you're trying to create a good painting. All right, no one wants to sit down and say, well, I'm going to produce a hunk of crap. Everyone wants to sit down and, you know, basically wants to do a good painting. But really what you're trying to do is learn. In almost every painting you do, even if you're painting for shows, you want to learn from it. You want to create something that you're not ashamed of, but at the same time you feel like you've grown a little bit as an artist. I think that's pretty important, truthfully. I more than just constantly trying to get a great piece. And I don't want to diminish that, by the way. I don't want to diminish the fact that you really, you know, are trying to do a decent painting. But I do want to really stress the fact that what you're trying to do at the same time is learn. And maybe you just learn a little bit each time. You learn a little bit each time. You don't learn in everything at once. Students always want to get really good. I know since I've been teaching for so long, I'm aware of this. The students want their work to look really good now. It almost never does. You know, when it does, be happy, but be aware that you're in the learning mode. In fact, we're all in the learning mode. I'm in the learning mode right now.
Mitchell had a good question. Do you worry about balancing your composition, the right heavy with bold rocks and the left more airy?
Yeah.
How do you prevent the composition from leaning one way or the other?
Basically with what you do with the background and the angles of the lights coming in. So I try not to do a 50-50 composition, first of all, where it's 50% one, 50% the other. So this is more of a 3/4. If you look at it, it's more like 3/4 of it is being taken up by the rocks and the boulders, and the other quarter is really kind of, you know, geared towards the background, the water. So I look at it that way.
And Steve,
I've seen, by the way,
sorry.
I've seen 50-50 compositions that do work. So every time you want to make a rule, there's going to be someone that breaks it and makes it work beautifully. The old line, rules are made to be broken. To a degree, I can't disagree with that a lot. I mean, you know, I try things. I've tried 50-50s and they've come out okay. Not always. Like I mentioned once upon a time that the great illustrator Andrew Loomis made that wonderful statement that every time you sit down, you can't be a genius, which means you're going to do some bad work. It's a nice way of saying that sometimes you're going to sit down and it's not going to look too good. And you know, it's just the way it goes. It's not like every time. I guess you could do, if you basically painted the same painting over and over, you could probably do it really well because you're really not pushing yourself. You're basically staying with the tried and true of what you've done, and which is absolutely fine. And, you know, and those people that are really concerned about sales and all this stuff, and if they found artists that have found their magic thing, if it's backlighting or if it's trees or if it's there's nothing wrong with doing that. But you know, most of the really good ones do push themselves. beyond just doing the same old, even though they may do that from time to time. They will tend to want to push themselves to see. Part of it is you want to see how good you can be. One of the reasons I got into painting from illustrating is I remember telling somebody this. I said, I want to see how good I can be. Because when I was illustrating, I always felt like I was painting a client's picture, which was rewarding financially, and it kept my hand moving and kept me, painting all the time. But I wanted to see if I was a good painter, and I felt like I couldn't be a good painter. There are guys that have been able to do that. I'm not one of them. I was not fortunate enough to be one of them, that have been able to kind of work as an illustrator and make their illustrations their art. Good friend of mine comes to mind who's just superb at that, and that's Robert Rodriguez. Is one of those guys that, honest to God, he can make his illustrations look like art. I never could do that. Not sure why. That's just could have been mentality. I'm looking for variations now, just so you back in these tones, like I can see a little bit dirtier blue before I kind of the white water is going to finish it. I need to get this sand color in there. I've really avoided that. Now, what is that? That's similar to some of the colors in the rocks.
Oh, quick question.
Yeah.
Laurel said, do you work in series or do you switch around all the time?
Say that again.
Do you work in series
That's a really good question.
or do you switch around I think you switch around all the time.
I probably do switch around all the time, although sometimes if I'm doing a show and it's based on a theme, then I will stay with that theme. And so, it just depends. I do switch around, and that's probably a detriment in terms of building a reputation, because nobody knows who the hell you are. But if I do too much of one thing, I find myself becoming somewhat bored and wanting to move into another arena. And so that's it. And if I do too many landscapes, all of a sudden I want to do figures. If I do too many figures, all of a sudden I want to do landscapes. Right now, the thing I'm missing is figures and interiors. I would like to, and I really need to work with some models to be able to get that. So you start to see we're starting to get some of this stuff working. Now, while I've got that same sand color, why not get it in here?
Why not?
I don't know why not. That's why I'm doing it.
Is it still the 12?
That's still the 12. That's the only two brushes I've used so far. At 3, I've used an Egbert or a long bristle filbert. I've used a 12, and I've used my gesso brush. A little bit lighter. I just noticed sand goes a little bit lighter as it comes up, hits around these rocks. And then we kind of blend that down into this color, go back to that color. And I'm probably going to need some more asphalt too, I can see.
Do you have it handy? Or
Probably not. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I do. Yeah, I got it right here.
Ray made a nice comment here. I find that I always have to remind myself to enjoy the process of making my work, because if I'm miserable or too safe, the quality always suffers.
Yeah. Have fun. I keep going back to that. It's why you probably started painting in the first place. It was fun. And then what happens is you get into it, you start getting serious, and all of a sudden the fun turns to frustration. Everybody does that is really serious. It just happens. That's why Dan's McCaw's great line about every artist needs to learn how to make frustration their friend. I've used that over and over. I'll use it forever. And I'll always credit him. I've said the same thing, but not with that poetry that Dan came up with, because he's exactly right. You're gonna be frustrated, and I've heard artists say some of the best paintings they've ever done is when they were on the verge of giving up on a piece. And all of a sudden, they fought their way through it, and they not only learned something, but they actually produced something they were much more proud of. I gotta get rid of that dark.
Mitchell wants to know if you could possibly do a demo some Friday with a model, or is that crazy?
I'd love to. If maybe we can get Ian over here.
Yeah, maybe do it if he's far enough away from you.
Yeah. Well, I just have to turn my easel around and aim in the other direction. But yeah, good idea. Thanks for bringing that up. That's not a bad idea. A lot of warmth up in there that I didn't get. I didn't get the warmth. I got the value, but I see a lot more warmth. So I pulled some more ochre into that color. Okay. Why didn't I do this? What's going on? Oh, I see. Talking to myself. That's not a good sign, everybody. That is not a healthy sign.
You do that all the time.
I usually make comments to myself. One of my comments that I tend, what the hell are you doing? Why did you do that? Get off that. I mean, I'll talk to myself a lot harsher than I talk to students. I can take it. I don't like that at all.
Why?
I just didn't like it. It felt like a hard edge. I need to get some undertones in here so I can bring that foam over it. There are phenomenal water painters. I was looking at a lady, Catherine Fasciato, who does these incredible, beautiful foam paintings. Just knocks my eyeballs out. I don't know how long she spends on them, but they're really, really phenomenal. So there are people that are really water specialists. And they do it quite well. I like to do water, but I like to do it in a much more indicative fashion. Once again, it has to do with a painting having energy and not necessarily looking refined, but not necessarily being as refined as you might think it is. So I like people to look at it and go, wow, that's a really neat looking landscape. And then get up and they realize it's just a bunch of paint that's been pushed around. It's so much more exciting.
Ray was saying what he would really like to see is an airbrushed colored pencil movie poster demo.
You know what, Ray? Number one, I don't know where the hell I threw my airbrush away. I don't even have an airbrush anymore. Number two, to do that quickly, I could do a head, but I couldn't do a whole, because of the process for switching mediums. And every time you switch mediums, you have to let it dry. For example, if I'm going to do, say, a colored pencil on top of things, what I do it on has to be dry enough to be able to make it work. So I'll tell you what, you do one first, Ray, and then I'll.
That was a long time ago, another lifetime ago.
Yeah, that was another lifetime. And I didn't use, I used much more paint than I did pencil.
Yeah.
A lot of guys use a lot of pencil. I used a lot more paint. And if I used pencil, I hit it. My goal was not to make it look like there was pencil used. Because there were people doing that so well that I just figured, I'll come up with my own little thing, my own gig, so to speak. And but I remember when I was teaching down south for an illustration class, I did a couple of demos. One of John Goodwin, I'll never forget, where I did kind of that thing. Actually, I think I used more wash than I did airbrush. I am not an airbrush. I never was. Man, there are guys that are so good at that. They're just spectacular. And a lot of them have gone into painting now. Mick McGinty comes to mind, who is just a fabulous airbrusher. Chris Hopkins, who's doing some great paintings now. All those guys are just such, wonderful airbrush artists. They had real good airbrushes. I had a cheap Pache, and I couldn't do refined stuff.
You used it mainly for big backgrounds.
Yeah, I used it mainly for, as Anna said, big backgrounds. So I'm looking for the white water, and sometimes it blends. And since I'm painting it, if I want it to sit on top, what I'm doing and get a stronger white, I'm using more medium. If, on the other hand, I want it to kind of fall back into these areas, so I'll kind of take some foam. Don't want it to stand out. I know I can always come back and make it lighter. First of all, that's kind of an important factor. And I'm going to keep this rock out, but this extends down to about here and works its way up. And there's a couple of light areas. Oh, I kind of like when I push that brush, I get a different effect. I get a real different effect. See how we're doing time-wise. Okay. A little over half an hour.
So you're kind of laying that on with a lighter touch.
Oh, yeah. I want to leave room for myself to be able to get lighter, add some lights into this.
You're letting some of that come through from underneath.
I'm pushing it into the paint sometimes, into that blue that's there. I'm starting to get the effect. Let's put it that way. Now, all this foam up front is not, this is not as bright as that. So I definitely want it to kind of, let's see what I can do right here first. If I want to add more tendrils of foam pulling off, I can. But one of the areas I really want to hit, add a lot more solvent-free gel into it, is right here, where it comes from this rock down here, and then works its way. I add medium to it because I need it to flow, because I want it to go that way. So I want it to go that way. So I'm going to go that way. But I wanted it to taper more. Didn't do that, did it? That's my mistake. So what do? You make it taper by finding this color, which is about there, and thinning it out. Oh, just like magic. Oh, I like that. That worked.
Happy with that?
I'm always happy when things work. So I'm going to take a bigger, I've got one of these bigger Egberts here. Add a lot of medium. And this time my medium is terp because I want it to mix. And we're going to, right from this, we're going to kind of start. And this is the kind of thing you could take hours on. And I'm going to do it in minutes. So don't yell at me. And it mixes into the color up in here because it gets quite warm. So it's not really white at this point. Sneaks its way right about here, it looks like. And then kind of loops back down around. More wet paint. Because I want it to mix. It's probably, it's standing out a little light. What's that?
When you lean on the table, it kind of shakes.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we want big, bold areas and little finesse areas, because that's how I see all this patterning down in here. Just step back. So it's part of it is working, part of it isn't. Probably need a little bit more little stuff up in here, but we want to take this and push it down in here and get some nice fat. And I can always pull lights back into it if I want to. Now I'm standing back. It's looking okay. I like that color. First of all, that's the color I was shooting for. I think I could go a little bit more violet on. Oh, I mixed a little
Do fun
That was
sound
me
effects
screaming.
while
So
you're- yeah.
I mixed a little bit of alizarin into it. I don't want it to go into the corner. Okay. That's not sticking. You see how it made that stroke? Didn't go down? I don't want to have to press. I just want to use the tip of that brush. So if it's not going down, it means my paint's not wet enough. That edge is too hard. Real dry brush. And right in here. A little bit of a pull. It's a little too strong. Just go over it a couple times, it'll disappear. Disappears right back into the paint. Okay, now as things are beginning to set up, I'm beginning to see some things. Number one, I can see very subtle reflections in here. The blue, but it also is kind of silvery. Now, how do you paint silvery? I usually make blue and keep it slightly gray violet. And I see some areas that's a little too light. So I threw some more blue into it, a little bit more alizarin. Let's try it one more time. I think I might be closer this time. We want to bring that color right up here a little bit more. The way it fades in here lighter. And I want this area right in here to get a little light. There we go. Just that's kind of what I was beginning to see. Just some of these little very, very subtle, but it adds that character to the water that's really necessary. I can see it right here. Somebody asked me a while ago, I keep my eye moving all over the painting. So I'm not looking at any one area and just trying to make that area just perfect. I'm moving from one area to the other visually. And as I do that, I'm seeing things that all of a sudden I didn't notice the first time. And it's one of the greatest things about painting. My line is I like to consider revisiting areas. You're revisiting an area. In other words, you were there and you worked on it and you got pretty much what you wanted, but now you're going back and you're noticing other little things. So what I'm doing is I'm adding some darks right now back, some, you can call it holes, back into this foam because I felt like it was a little too dense.
Bill wants to know what kind of thickness, viscosity do you try to get when working over wet areas?
Not real thick, unless I'm doing stuff like the rocks. If I'm doing things like the rocks, then I'm trying to get my paint thick. And I will return to those in a little bit. Right now, I'm going to get the sand. I also, oh man, look at this. Look at this, you guys. There's some, it's violet.
Is there a different color temperature in the white water from back to front?
Not necessarily. There is here, but this has to do more with this receiving sun. This has been thinned out. This is real thick white water receiving. This is very thin, and it's kind of murky and mixed into the other color. So it isn't always. I see these little. Now that's too strong, but I do see them in there. I can go back and use more ultramarine and violet if I want, and kind of go back and forth until they end up where I want them. I do want to get that. I don't want to dwell too long on it because I can see that I could, but I do want to get the sand moving just a little bit more. I'm going to get a little lighter. A little more orange into it because I keep picking up blue. So I'm throwing a little bit more of the cat orange hue. nice brush to kind of do this stuff with, this big old rosemary. So I separated the sand from the water, which it wasn't before. I think I'm going to go back to these rocks. No, you know what? Let's do background first. Okay. Because I don't know how much time I'm going to have to really.
Careful, Craig.
What?
When you
I'm pressing on. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm pressing on the easel. I mean, the tripod right next to me, which is causing.
movement.
I hope what it does is cause the painting to look better. Knock that sky down right there. Same here.
Why?
It felt like it needed it. And a little bit of information back there, not much, because it's way in the background. But I do see it get a little lighter here. A little bit of, basically I just warmed up the sky color that I was using, that reddish color. Some lights here and there in these rocks. Rock right standing out front. A couple of lights on the cliff. Again, you don't want to overdo that. It's way in the background. All right. As we move to this plane, we're going to get a little bit more interest, a little bit more color variation. So I get some grays going on in here. And for that, I just mixed into the color I was using. I just mixed a little bit of the blue. And then we'll bring out some oranges. Again, I'm moving pretty quick on it, where if I were spending a long time, I would probably be a little bit more careful with my mixtures. And sometimes I like the spontaneity of just guessing. I mean, and you look at it and you go, hey, I guessed pretty good, or I would have never picked that color had I really thought about it. It's a lot of this is what I call intuitive painting. So you're painting what you see, but you're still using, using all these, for lack of a better word, tricks that you've picked up over the years to make things work.
What tricks are you using now?
I'm using light to dark and not worrying. The trick I'm using really is light to dark and not worrying about color. Worrying strictly about value. Strictly value. And now I'm just smearing. I don't like that. I like that better. That's one of the best painting instruments you got there. Any darker there? I do there. That's a little bit better. That's too dark, but it's better. So if it's too dark, paint it lighter and let your paint mix into paint. And by mixing the two together, sometimes it looks even better. Sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, do something else. I keep saying that. Keep working until but don't overwork. That's probably the hardest part to understand is keep working, but don't overwork, meaning don't over fuss. I'm working and I'm piling paint on, but I'm not purposely not trying to over fuss. It's not the kind of painting I'm doing. Now I want warmer. Oh, God. Oh, did that stand out too much? More warm. There we go. That's probably a little more than I wanted, but it's heading the right direction. Let's put it that way. There we go. I remember, I don't know if you guys recall, but when I first started this, I said I was going to come back to this and start to amplify some of these areas that I see. This is a real good brush for this too.
Which one is that?
It's just a long bristle filbert or an egbert, whatever you want to refer to it as. It's just a nice brush because you can't be too precise with these brushes. And so it really works well for doing this kind of indication. Let's get see a little bit of warm up in here. We got rid of that house. Back to the orange. Just keep cutting away until you get it where you want it. I don't like that big. Let's just break this up a little bit here. It's just too much. And I'm do a little bit of work on the trees. What do you say? Number one, there's a house back there, but since I've not got a house, it's going to be a sky hole and not a house. So what am I talking about right here? Boy, that's too light of a sky hole. Yeah, we'll fix it.
Carolyn Rogers said she figured out how bad overworking is.
How'd you figure that out?
That's a good question.
Overworking is one of the biggest mistakes that people will generally make, is overworking. More so, truthfully, I think on figures.
What's a good remedy for not?
Don't overwork.
Yeah, but how do you stop yourself from overworking?
A good remedy,
Walk away.
just keep stepping back. Don't quit looking at your piece up close.
Yeah.
That is actually probably the best remedy. I mean, I wasn't being facetious with that. I mean, I really believe that's probably the best way to be able to tell how your painting is working. And that goes for even this. That goes for more than just. Let's give a little bit of volume to those trees, make them a little darker. Okay. Too small of a brush. Damn it. I felt I was picking. As soon as I started to make a stroke, I don't. Okay, that's a little too dark. So I'm just mixing it in with the color I already have. And got a gob of paint on there I didn't want. Now these trees are the kind of things you could really have fun and go back into if you had the time.
So you're just adding contrast at this
I'm
point.
adding a little bit of where I see the darks in the trees. I'm just kind of indicating those. I should do an acrylic piece one week just because I haven't done one. Maybe I will. We're going to keep going on these. The only Friday we're going to miss is the Thanksgiving Friday, you guys, because we're going to be with our family. And all of you are too. And if you guys were actually planning on sitting down and watching me instead of football, I just don't know what to say. Okay, let's put a few little snaps in there because I don't want to spend too much time on it. I want to go back to the rocks. Oh, we'll get lighter branches in the tree. This is where it's, if you have the time, I'm just noticing them now.
Sargus said yes, he'd rather watch you than football, but let's see. Nora.
I'd rather watch football than me. Who knows? Some dappled light coming through there. Trees feel, at least they feel more like trees now. You know, I could go a heck of a lot further with them, but at least I'm beginning to feel like they're trees and not just a big glob there. Let's see if we can go into these rocks a little bit. I think I'm going to grab a knife.
Nora made a good point. She said you don't overwork because your facility is such that you have significant accuracy. And the main thing is drawing. Your color value choices are wonderful.
Color and value is the key, and shape. Color, value, shape, and shape is drawing. Just to, I like to always clarify that when I say shape, because a lot of people think shape is drawing. Shape is just drawing without the contours. Okay. In other words, if you draw, you're drawing contours. When you're painting shape, you're painting the areas between the contours.
Ray was saying that he used to work overwork his pieces until you told him to hold the brush, the long handle brush
Hold back.
farther back instead of choking up on it.
That's a good point, Ray. Thanks for making that, because that's another, people want to know how not to get overworked. Don't paint like this. Paint back here, and if you have to, hold here. But that would be that I would bring that up, and I appreciate the
Who was it that said you bought the whole brush, didn't you? I can't remember who it was.
you bought the whole brush, why don't you use it?
Yeah.
You do.
Somebody that used to say that, I can't remember who it was.
Yeah, you paid for the whole damn brush. So don't just deal with the tip.
Yeah,
Okay, now we want to just break this up. This is just a matter of literally looking what's there and not making it, because there were big solid areas, like this big light area is just, that's the color of the board right there. So let's get rid of that. And then you can actually draw crevices in with this. So you can take and we can go in and say, let's put one in here. Whoops. No, more chirp on it. Put one in here. One back in here. I like to use more alizarin when I do these for some reason. Mars red or Mars violet is a color I will use very often. I need to go back and put this kind of stuff in. Well, I like that. Jeez, I don't know what the hell I did, but I like it. I screwed it up, but I like it. I want to get that protrusion right here. Okay. But I'm getting I'm intermixing these colors, and I kind of like what's beginning to happen. Right here, I think I need more there, and then a little bit of a piece right in there. Intermixing. I love this intermixing that goes on. The way one color kind of fills into another color, as opposed to, and then if I wanted to, at the very end, I could come in and refine as much as I want. Put a couple lights in too. So you don't only have to use your knife for darks. For example, right in on the top of that area, top of that rock, Naples yellow light. Let's see what I can do with it. What do you say?
Laurel's asking, she's heard about first read, second read, etc. Can you explain?
Yep. I'd love to talk about that. So first read is when you first look at it, it's exactly what it says it is. When it's what you read first in a painting. A lot of individuals now are using the phrase hierarchy, which is primarily the same thing. First read, second read. Hierarchy. What becomes the main thing you want people to look at? Well, that's the first read. The second read are things you discover. I used to have a teacher that used to say the thing about the difference between illustration and fine art is illustration really primarily is geared towards first read. In other words, an illustration's job is to grab someone's attention. And where a painting is something that you can look at, and the more you look at it, the more you discover. So those would be, you could say a painting has several readings, not just the first read, but several other readings. In other words, in this case, first read is probably that rock right there. Why? It's the most prominent, it's the most clearly defined. Second read might be some of the stuff in the background. Third read might be, oh my God, look at all these things back there. Even there's houses on these hills. That's kind of, when people refer to first read, second read, that's exactly what they're referring to. What you read first, what you read second. I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people aren't using those terms anymore. I do. Being a student, an art school student of the 60s. So that's the way we were taught. And I think it's very, it explains things very clearly. What some things that are first read, some things that are second read, like in here, it's too simple. So I'm going to scuff it. I've got a lot of this, and we're just going to, what do I mean by scuff it? I can do it just like that. Just kind of I'm just take my knife and because it's, and then if there are strong elements, strong features, strong crevices. I can pronounce those more. I can pronounce them with a brush. I can pronounce them with a knife. I'm going to use a brush right now. I have to use a lot of medium because I want it to sit on top. I didn't want that drip, but
Lori was saying it's like having the main star attraction, then the supporting actor.
that's it. That's exactly what it is. And then even the more reads, so you get a supporting actor, and then you start noticing the supporting actors got a scar on his cheek. The support, you start noticing other aspects. So it's what you first take note of, and then after a while, you take note of other things. And it makes paintings to a degree very exciting. Well, I like some of the intermixing I'm getting. It's a little flat in here. I could probably afford to add some textural qualities there. This rock that is peeking out, I really haven't done it justice. So if I take my lighter color, because the side of it is very bright. Now that rock is starting to pop. I don't know, that's a leftover, meaning it shouldn't be there. It's the initial board that was on there. But there is now I can take and I can actually clarify that and bring an edge to this rock. It comes down, break it down in here, a little bit more light in here, a little bit right in here. So you build. This is why I don't like to build all my lights in one shot. I like them to come up later, up along with color. So I've got some more orange in my brush here. So I'm starting to pull those out. I'm giving it a little more color. That's okay. That's starting to pop more than I wanted to. So I might want to kind of take some of that and maybe I'm going to add some more maples to it and maybe add a few more lights right about in here, maybe on the ground plane. Looks like in here I could push it, maybe here. Variation. So it doesn't look like it's painted in two colors, okay? So it looks, there is more interest in it. Now, I need to take this. I just noticed this and bring it.
I don't know if I can see that.
That way. It may be too subtle, but I made that mountain come in front of the other mountain. It may be a little too subtle for you. You may not see it. I know you can't see everything that you do. It's almost impossible because some of the stuff is quite subtle. But this is where I slow down and kind of become a little bit more careful about some of these areas there down in really nice light color that stands out behind this rock. So I'm painting it right into that color that's already there, but I'm trying to keep it behind that rock. Something bothers me about that stroke, and I kind of see what it is. I read it more as a stroke than a rock, and I think what happens is it's got to fade that way. And maybe a little bit lighter in here. And it's not nice. I'm using color on color. So this is a grayer color I have in my brush right now. And I notice as this rock goes up, it's not as brilliant. It's not as beautiful orange as it is when it goes down. So one of the things about rocks is they're not a color. There are a myriad of colors. There are several colors. You can push them. And then if it stands out too much, bring it back under control. Explore. Let your colors layer. And in doing so, I think you'll be happier with the results rather than try and be 100% just nailing it exactly like you see it. You still want to deal with the value structure. So if something's light, get it, don't be afraid to keep it light. But if you see it lean a little bit of a direction, take it that direction. making, the bottom line for me in painting, along with creating the illusion of whatever it is that you're trying to depict, is truly making nice looking marks, interesting marks, because that's what all painting is, just marks, just paintbrush marks, line marks, whatever it is. And to me, the more interesting, and that's why the people I've always admired the most are people that you see the artist's hand. You don't just see the image of the subject, but you feel the movement of the paint. And I probably have overstated that more than I need to, but I really believe if there was a philosophy that I was going to begin to espouse, it would be making nice marks to create the illusion that you're shooting for. And that's what I'm always doing. I'm always trying to create nice marks and still create the illusion. I want the marks to be interesting. So when the viewer goes up there, they go, wow, look at that. That's just a big clumsy stroke. But when I stand back, oh my gosh, it looks like a rock. It looks like a tree. It looks like, a foot, whatever the heck it is you're trying to make it look like.
Yeah, it just looks like a bunch of abstract shapes right now. But they all together
They are.
look like
It
rocks.
is a bunch of abstract shapes, and hopefully, as they come together, it
Yeah.
begins to take on the characteristic of the rocks.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's absolutely. If I've succeeded at that, then I've pretty much succeeded. Except I might personally feel I need more indications of clarity, things that clarify it. For example, a little bit more variation. I think we're almost through, if I'm not
Yeah, I
mistaken.
think you're going over.
Am I going over? I can't tell how the hell this damn thing works. I said I was going to try and come in a little brighter. Yeah, I'm just about there. So I'm going to do one last thing here. I'm going to take white. I'm going to take the, what do you call it, white? Warm white. And see how much lighter I can get there. And I have a lot of solvent-free gel in this. The reason being is now I can lay it on top. And so anything I really want to pronounce at this particular moment, I can. So what you do is you hold back on those brighter lights so that you always have, it goes back to, you don't push you save your brightest lights, your brightest colors, and your darkest darks to the end.
We're always saying that brush strokes have an energy if they stop and end every time the painting feels stuck.
Well, brush strokes is what gives your painting energy.
Yeah.
I often feel my stuff is a little bit too refined, and I almost wish it abstracted a little bit more. And then if I go too abstract with something, I go, oh man, I really want to refine this more. So I don't know how you all feel, but I run back and forth between those two all the time.
About ready to call it?
I think I'm just about ready to call it. I think that it means it's almost lunch, and it means that I probably will. I usually end up putting about 10 to 15 more minutes into these things after lunch, just because I'll come back after lunch and I'll go, oh, why did I do that? And so that'll probably happen. In the meantime, what I always say to all of you every week, and I mean it, is paint, happy painting. I'm going to stand back for a
I'm
second.
gonna go closer just to
I wanted to see how this looks.
go ahead.
So I'm about 10 feet away from it. I don't like that edge. Other than that, so if I just take the sky and break that edge up a little bit, I'll be happier. It just was a little too sharp. Even that mountain would kind of break. It's just so it isn't quite, it was just this harsh line.
Okay, I'll just go in a little closer.
Okay, but that's what you get from not standing back.
Brushwork here.
My main rock, my star, my first read, I'm pretty happy with. Okay. Not that happy with some of the other, like up in here, I still think I need more darks. it's basically there. It reads okay. All right. Take my glasses off, go wash my hands. Happy painting. That was fun for 24:30, just to kind of see what I could get done in that amount of time. There's things I like about it. As I stand back more, it looks pretty good. The trees are, to me, are standing out a little more than I want them to, but I think I can balance the darkness of the trees with a few more darks down here, and then that won't look so dark.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Thanks, Tim. All right.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks, you too.